We left off last week within the Seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Jazakallah khair. And you have to fix it up again. And we concluded the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, which is what we talked about over the last couple of weeks. And today, inshallah, we're going to move forward a little bit from that, inshallah, if I can. Perfect. So right after Hudaybiyah, we talked about that how the Prophet ﷺ went the year after for Umrah al-Qada and kind of what happened during that time. But now I want to tell you a little bit of what occurred after the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. For the short period of time before Quraysh basically broke the broke the treaty or betrayed the Prophet ﷺ, betrayed the Muslims. It wasn't that long. The treaty was for 10 years. 10 years of truce, 10 years of peace and no fight and no war. But it didn't go on that long. But within the period between Hudaybiyah and between the Fatih Makkah, basically, because that's what's going to happen, there was enough time for a number of things to occur. Important things, important events occurred before Fatih Makkah, between Hudaybiyah and Fatih Makkah, that basically kind of paved the way for what was going to happen later. The moment the Prophet ﷺ got the treaty signed, the Sahaba, as I said, initially didn't really understand why he accepted such unjust and unfair articles and conditions within the treaty itself. But ﷺ knew exactly what he was doing. He just wanted those 10 years of peace. He just wanted the openness of entering the allegiance with the Prophet or the allegiance with Quraysh without there being any fear within Arabia. He knew if he did that, if he got that, things would work out almost automatically. But the moment he was able to go home, like we got to Medina, the first thing he did is this over here. The first thing he did. It's very interesting that there was almost not even a night between him getting to Medina and him initiating correspondences with the kings of the land. The moment he was able to agree with Quraysh, no more war, that's it, we're done, no more fighting anymore, there's peace, people can enter in my alliance, people can leave, they can do whatever they want, there's that freedom of choice, freedom of religion. He is now recognized as a state. I didn't talk about that last time, I left it till today. Another reason why he was, he smiled alayhi salatu wasalam when that treaty was signed, is that Quraysh, without even noticing, because I'm wondering if you noticed it, maybe you did, maybe you didn't. Quraysh, without even noticing, by signing this treaty, kind of acknowledged the Prophet and the Muslims as a country. You understand what I'm trying to say? Like, by the fact that they actually signed the treaty of Hudaybiyah, without even knowing it, Quraysh, by doing that, acknowledged that the Muslims are a country. Because before that, they called them outlaws and terrorists or whatever you wanted to call them. But when they signed the treaty, forget about the 10 years that they got, just signing it, even if there was no 10 years, that means the Quraysh is basically acknowledging that Muhammad and the Muslims are a country. They're their own entity. They have their own rules and laws because they weren't recognized before that. Yes, they had it. They had a country, they had an army, they had laws, but they weren't recognized, not in the land by anybody. And the Prophet ﷺ didn't have that yet. And when they signed the treaty, he knew that he got that. Now he is recognized as a state with a leader who signed a treaty with the leaders of Quraysh, because the only actual state in Arabia that was recognized was Quraysh. And if Quraysh, basically Mecca, recognizes a place, then that place is legit. So the fact that they signed the treaty, the Prophet ﷺ was now recognized as a head of a state that was legitimate within the region. It took them a while to figure that out. They say, and I'll tell you the story of this gentleman today, that when Amr ibn al-As figured that out, he left. That when it finally honed on him, that we just basically recognized and acknowledged, so he left. He picked up his stuff, he packed his bags, and he left. He left Arabia altogether, and he went to Habasha. I'll tell you the story in a little bit. But the fact that he was now a state and he was recognized, the first thing he did, alayhi salatu wasalam, is he started to communicate and correspond with the kings of the land around him, sending them letters. So he brought Kuttab al-Wahi, the people who wrote, like Sayyidina Ali and Muawiyah and others, and Zayd, and he said, start writing. Write to ila Kisra, عظيم فارس, وإلى قيصر, عظيم الروم, وإلى المقوقس, عظيم مصر, وإلى, writing to the different leaders. And they said, Ya Rasulullah, you can't send a letter without a seal. You need a seal. You need a seal. You see that thing over there? That was his seal. You see, kings always had seals, and they told him, you don't have a khatam. You need if you send a piece of paper without a seal on it, no one's going to read it. It doesn't work like that in the land. He's like, yes, you're right. We should get a seal. So he got a seal. And the seal was, he wore it on his finger, alayhi salatu wasalam. And they would put on fire something like wax. And then you would kind of put the liquid wax on. You would take the paper and you've seen medieval movies, and then he put the seal in that. And if it was broken, then you know someone opened it and read it. And if it comes that way, you know this is the seal of Muhammad. So the Prophet ﷺ also had a seal now. So the Muslim country had its own seal, and it was Muhammad Rasulullah with Allah's name at the top. So you read it from down to top. Because when they made the first seal for him, they made it Muhammad Rasulullah, but on the top is his name, alayhi salatu wasalam. He looked at it, he said, no, make it the opposite, because I don't want my name to be on top and Allah's name to be on the bottom. So switch it over. So it was Muhammad Rasulullah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So he sends 14 messengers. 14 within a week and a half of getting back from Hudaybiyah. This is before Umratul Qada. This is before they went and did the Umrah that I told you about last time. They come back from Hudaybiyah, he starts writing these letters. And he sends 14 messengers. I'm going to show you, this is one of the letters, actually what it looks like. This is actually what one of those letters actually looked like. Some of them are preserved. And they were sent to the kings from Muhammad Rasulullah ila whatever, Kisra Azim Faris or Qaisar Azim al-Rum. يعني أدعوك أن تشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأدعوك إلى الإسلام فإن لم تسلم كان عليك إثم الإريسيين. He would tell them, accept Islam, or else the consequences of doing that will await you on the day of judgment, and you will carry and be accountable for the people amongst you under your care who did not accept Islam. So you need to. He was very direct. It was like he was speaking, alayhi salatu wasalam. It was like he owned. It's like he ran the world. Like the way he was sending these letters, it wasn't rude. It was just very, very confident. It wasn't something that a guy within a city of maybe 2,000, 3,000 people is sending to empires that rule the majority of what was known as the traditional world or the old world before we found out this part of the world. You're talking about Persia and Rome, and that's it. What else is there? These are the two countries. He's sending the head of states letters telling them, if you don't accept Islam, you're going to be accountable for it. So I think it's best for you that you listen to what I say, accept this guidance, and say La ilaha illallah. So these people are reading it and wondering, who is this? Who is this person again? Who's sending this? Sallallahu alaihi Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But he sent these letters, and these are pictures of some of these. You can actually read them, and maybe we'll do that at a different time because it takes a while for me to break down the actual words for you. But I want to tell you the story that is worthy of kind of pointing out here, because this happened, and there's a strong, authentic chain of narration for this one. Alayhi salatu wasalam would send a letter to Hercules. So not the Hercules, Zeus, the thing you play on, no, not those movies. But his actual name, the head of state of the Roman Empire at the time, the Byzantine Roman Empire, was a guy called Caesar, his name was Hercules. So he sent him a letter. Just happened to be that he was in Damascus at the time. He was not in the parts of Turkey where he usually is. He was in Damascus at the time. And he was given the letter. So he reads it. He said, who is this? Who is this person? Like, this is very interesting. And this person sending it to me is very interesting. I would like to know who this is. So they said his name is Muhammad ibn Abdullah. He's like, where is he from? They said he's from the city called Mecca. Like, Well, who knows him? Is there anyone here who knows him? Can you go to the market and see if anyone is from Arabia who knows this gentleman? So they go. And out of his bad luck, so Abu Sufyan, as I told you, was marginalized after Khandaq, after the Battle of the Trench, and in fact, the failure of the Battle of the Trench. They told him, that's it, we've listened to you long enough, no more. You're not welcome to lead or speak, or we don't care about your opinion. So he was marginalized completely. And for Hudaybiyah, he wasn't allowed to, if you remember the story of Hudaybiyah, he had no role. He wasn't there, he didn't speak, he didn't negotiate anyone. Like Suhail ibn Amr did the negotiation because Abu Sufyan was marginalized, or else Abu Sufyan is way more qualified to negotiate anything because he's much more seasoned as a politician, but he was marginalized by his own people. So he said, all right, fine, whatever. So he leaves. He goes on his caravan, he takes his annual caravan, the facilitation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a couple of months early. Because he doesn't want to be there for what's going to happen. He knows that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is going to outsmart the people of Quraysh and get the treaty. He knows that, so he doesn't want to be there for it. So he leaves. He thinks if he runs away, maybe nothing will happen. Little did he know that by the time he gets to Damascus, the Prophet ﷺ has already signed the treaty with Quraysh, gone back to Mecca, wrote a letter, and sent it to Hercules, who happened to be in Damascus at the same time Abu Sufyan was. So Abu Sufyan is trying to forget about all these problems and Rasulullah and Muslims and treaties. He just wants to sell him by. And people come into the market saying, who knows? They use certain words, Fata Quraysh or the person who's claiming to be a prophet, or this person. So he's not saying a word, but then all of his followers are pointing at him. He was not very loved by his followers. Like Abu Sufyan was a very cruel person when it came to business. So all of the people who worked for him were happy to rat him out. The moment they said, who knows Muhammad? Oh, he knows him. And Abu Sufyan was like, no, I don't know him. No, he knows him. He's actually related to him. So they came in, they took Abu Sufyan, and they took everyone else who worked with him. And they took him to the castle of where Hercules was waiting, was staying. So he asked him, who are you? So this is in Arabic just for those of you who want to read it in Arabic, can go ahead and do that. So they come in, and Abu Sufyan is surrounded by some of the younger gentlemen from Quraysh who went with him on the caravan, and all of the employees and the slaves and all that are there. So it's like 50 people. And he's standing there. So Hercules said, أَيُّكُمْ أَقْرَبُ نَسَبًا إِلَى Muhammad? Which of you is most related or closely related to this gentleman? So everyone points to Abu Sufyan, Sakhr ibn Harb, because he's the one who's most, and he's not that related to the Prophet ﷺ. So there's maybe 4 or 5 grandfathers, but he's related enough. They all come from the same, same city, same family, same tribe. So he's pushed up front. So Abu Sufyan said, "Ana aqrabuhum nasab." I am the closest to him in terms of lineage. So he comes closer. So this is what Hercules does. This is what the Caesar does. He said, "All right, stand facing me, and all of your followers and people with you will face me as well behind you." So he looks at the people standing behind him and says, "Look, I'm going to ask him questions. If he lies, just let me know. Just don't even say anything. Just make a gesture, and off with his head." So everyone's quiet. And Abu Sufyan's like, "Oh, no." Because Abu Sufyan in the beginning is like, "I'm totally going to lie. Whatever he asks me, I'm going to lie." But then he did this little thing. He's like, يقول أبو سفيان وعلمت أن ما من أحد على الأرض أبغض يبغضونني أكثر من هؤلاء. No one on earth hates me more than the people standing behind me. وإنهم إن كذبت ليخبرنه. And if I lie, they will immediately let him know, and they'll kill me. So I had to stand there hoping that I had to tell the truth. He didn't have the intention, but he had to, because now if the moment he starts lying, someone behind him will just give a little bit of a gesture, and then his head is gonna go flying. So he goes on and he asks them these questions, and I'll show you some of the questions. So he begins. He asks him a number of questions. I can never memorize them, so I put them up there because I'm too lazy to memorize them. Because he asked him around 10 or 11 different questions about the Prophet. So the first one was, هل هو فيكم ذو نسب? Does he come from a good family? Or is he someone who comes from a simple family or a bad background? Or he comes from a broken home or something, or a family of crime, or a family of, or is he does he come from a family of nobles, people of respect? فقال هو فينا ذو نسب. No, he has a very good, he has a good lineage. So he asked him, فهل من آبائه من كان ملكا? Was any of his fathers or forefathers or ancestors a king? فقال لا. No, none of his ancestors were king. قال فمن يتبعه أشراف الناس أم صغائرهم؟ قال بل ضعفاؤهم. Who follows him? The very rich, or the one who are a bit weaker? No, it's generally speaking, the most of the time you find following him the people who are oppressed. The oppressed are the ones who follow him generally the most. And I'll just point out that for you here. قال أيزيدون أم ينقصون? The numbers of people who are following him, are they expanding, or is it pretty much stagnant, or do people kind of go down? قال بل يزيدون. Said no, they're always increasing. There's always more. قال فهل يرتد أحد منهم سخطة لدينه بعد أن يدخل فيه? Does anyone who enters his faith leave later on because they find it to be not good, or they're not happy with it, or they dislike him or dislike the faith? فقال لا. No, we don't know anything like that. قال فهل كنتم تتهمونه بالكذب قبل أن يقول ما قد قال? Did you know him to be someone who lied prior to this? Like, was he known to be a liar, or did he tell lies? فقال لا. No, he wasn't known to be a liar. قال فهل يغدر? He said, does he betray? So this is what he said. قال لا ونحن منه في مدة لا ندري ما هو فاعل فيها. No, he doesn't, but we just signed a treaty with him, and we don't know. He still may do it. We don't know. يقول أبو سفيان, he said, ولم تمكنني كلمة أدخل فيها شيئا غير هذه. And that's the only thing I could shove into this conversation to make him look bad. Like the only thing I could get into this conversation with Caesar to make the Prophet ﷺ look bad was telling him, the treaty is still fresh. I don't know, maybe he will betray us, but he hasn't done this before. So he just used it to kind of get something in because he couldn't get anything in. He asked him, did anyone say this prior to him? Like, was there anyone? Were there prophets? Were there people? Is it known in your tribes for people to come in and claim prophecy before? And he said, no one. This is the first time anyone has ever claimed prophecy within Arabia. قال فهل قاتلتموه? Have you fought with him? Has there been war? He said, yes, نعم. قال فكيف كان قتالكم إياه? He said, how are the wars between you and him? قال الحرب بيننا وبينه سجال ينال منا وننال منه. It's back and forth. Sometimes we win, sometimes he wins. قال فماذا يأمركم? What are his commands? What is his teaching? So what does he teach? قال يقول اعبدوا الله وحده ولا تشركوا به شيئا واتركوا ما يقول آباؤكم. He said, he tells us to worship this one God and not to have any associates and to leave what our fathers have taught us to do. He's trying to shove in little things to make it seem that he's not doing the right thing. ويأمرنا بالصلاة والصدق والعفاف والصلة. And he tells us to pray, and he generally commands honesty and chastity and good behaviors. So now Hercules has done his line of questioning. And he's doing it obviously in a different language because he doesn't speak Arabic. There's a person who's kind of translating back and forth. So now Hercules actually explains why he asked all these questions. Like, what was he looking for? This is very interesting. So what he says. He says this. قال سألتك عن نسبه فذكرت أنه فيكم ذو نسب فكذلك الرسل تبعث في نسب قومها. I asked you about his lineage, and you told me he has a good lineage amongst you, comes from good families, and that's how prophets are. They are always sent within amongst their people, and they come from good backgrounds. They never come from poor or criminal backgrounds. وسألتك هل قال أحد منكم هذا القول فذكرت أن لا فقلت لو كان أحد قال هذا القول رجل يتأسى بغيره. I asked you, did anyone claim prophecy before him? You said no. And the reason I asked is because if you told me, yes, there are people who claim prophecy before, then I would have just said he's just doing what others have done before. He's just following in the footsteps of people who tried to get it done and couldn't get it done, so he's giving it a shot. But you said no one did this. وسألتك هل كان من آبائه من ملك فذكرت أن لا قلت لو كان من آبائه من ملك قلت رجل يطلب ملك أبيه. I asked you, is it one of his fathers ever a king? Did he have any in his ancestry kings? And you said no. And the reason I asked you, because if you said yes, then I would say he's just trying to regain his father's throne. He's trying to reclaim his father or grandfather's throne, and he's going to do it through claiming prophecy. But you're saying that none of his ancestors are a king. وسألتك هل كنتم تتهمونه بالكذب قبل أن يقول ما قال فذكرت أن لا فقد أعرف أنه لم يكن ليكذب على الناس ليترك الكذب على الناس ويكذب على الله. And I asked you, did you know him to be a liar prior to this? And you said no. And the reason I asked you, because if you told me yes, then I would say, well, then that's the trend that he has in his life. But if you're saying no, then he wouldn't leave lying to people and then go lie on behalf of God. That would be, and if you're going to lie on behalf of God, then we should know that you're probably much more open to lying to people in general. But you're not going to spend a lifetime of honesty and truthfulness, and then the time that you lie, you end up lying on behalf of the Almighty Himself. Which makes a lot of sense. وسألتك أشراف الناس اتبعوه أم ضعفاؤهم فذكرت أن ضعفاؤهم اتبعوه أتباع الرسل. And I asked you, who follows him? The noble, the very rich, or the people who are oppressed and weak? And you told me the majority of them are oppressed, and that are the stories of all prophets. That is the story of every prophet. The prophets are always followed at the beginning by those who are oppressed because they come and they bring social reform. And reform is always going to stand by the weak and to take the rights from the strong at the beginning. And then, of course, later on changes. And then I asked you, ثم سألتك أيزيدون أم ينقصون فذكرت أنهم يزيدون كذلك أمر الإيمان حتى يتم. And I asked you, what about the numbers? Do they increase or do they decrease the people who follow him? You told me they increase. And that is how Iman is. The moment it touches the heart, it never leaves. Once Iman enters, it's very difficult to remove it. So once people enter this and find the beauty of Iman, of guidance, it's hard for them to ever walk away from it after they taste it. وسألتك أيرتد أحد سخطة لدينه بعد أن يدخل فيه ذكرت أن لا وكذلك الإيمان حين تخالط بشاشته القلوب أو بشاشته القلوب. And I asked you, do people leave the deen? And you said no. And he explained that, and that's usually how true guidance is, true iman and true closeness to God when you actually experience it. That's what you never leave. You would never walk away. No one would commit apostasy once it's there. وسألتك هل يغدر فذكرت أن لا وكذلك الرسول لا تغدر. I asked you, does he betray? You said no, and that is what is known about prophets, that they would never, messengers, they never betray. وسألتك بما يأمركم فذكرت أنه يأمركم أن تعبدوا الله لا تشركوا به شيئا وينهاكم عن عبادة الأوثان ويأمركم بالصلاة والصدق والعفاف فإن كان So we asked him at the end, what does he tell you to do? And then you told me, he preaches monotheism, he preaches tawheed. That is the basis of this deen. Never forget that. Never ever forget what Islam is built on. The fundamental piece, the basic piece of this deen. That core concept, core concept of tawheed. Never forget that. The moment you lose sight of that piece, you lose sight of what Islam is as a whole. We are muwahhideen. That's how we stand out. That's the difference. We believe in la ilaha illallah. We believe there is no God but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's only one source for everything. There's only one source of knowledge. There's only one source of power. There's only one source for ethics and values and principles and rulings and teachings and accountability. It's one. It comes from one source. You are a servant to one. You're not a servant to many. You are accountable to one. You're not accountable to many. And you take your commands and your orders from one. You don't take them from many. It's one, it's tawheed. You remind yourself of that because that's what this deen is about. That you don't follow the whims and desires of yourself or others and you're not interested. And then all that is just background noise. The rulings the red lines that you continue to observe in your life are the red lines that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself drew for you. He said, you do not kill, and you do not steal, and you don't commit zina, you don't shab khamr, and you don't mistreat your parents, and you don't lie, and you don't betray. These lines only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala draws, and the only one who will hold you accountable to them is Allah, and you never cross them because you believe in the oneness of Allah. That line is not a joke. It's not a human being who put it there. It's not a committee. It's not a government. There are no exceptions. There's no bail. There's nothing. This is the line. He put it there. You observe it till the end of your life, and then that's how you hope that you make it to Jannah. Tawheed, la ilaha illallah. I am servant to only one. Everyone else is just like me. They're human beings. We differ in our amount of knowledge and experience and strength and background. There's a lot of variability. But we're equal. We're human beings and we're equal. We all come from the soil of this earth. And the only true accountability in this world comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The only almighty, the only omniscious is Allah. Jalla Jalalullah. That's it. The concept of tawheed is the most simple theology that exists in the world. You can't tell me that la ilaha illallah is confusing. You can't tell me la ilaha illallah is hard to wrap your head around. You can't say la ilaha illallah is difficult to comprehend and swallow. La ilaha illallah is the easiest, most simple idea in the world, and it's the only true. It's the only truth that exists in this universe. La ilaha illallah. There's no God. You see, there's no God. That's the first piece of it. There is no God. But Allah. It's only one. There's nothing. It's just one. You barely made it. One. That's it. No one else. Don't think about anyone else. Don't worry about anyone else. Don't waste your time on anyone else. Because there's no one else. It's only one. La ilaha illallah. Just turn to Him. This truth that everything around you was created based upon. Whether you acknowledge it or not does not increase Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in any way. You are just being given the opportunity to adhere to this fundamental truth that governs everything, so that you're in synchrony with every creation that He put in this world, subhanahu wa ta'ala, by saying La ilaha illallah. Everything believes it. So the concept is so important. Even Abu Sufyan, who wasn't even Muslim, understood this is it. He came with tawheed. Tawheed is not lucrative. Tawheed there's not a lot of money to be made on tawheed. Tawheed doesn't allow huge institutions to make profit over others. There's not a lot of flexibility in it. It forces people to behave in a way that is selfless. It forces people to see themselves as servants, as caregivers of others. It forces us to see ourselves outside of what we would like to see ourselves to be. In this capitalist, consumeristic timing that we're living in, where the focus is all on the individual and on taking what you want and taking more than what you need by far and focusing on yourself and only caring for yourself. Tawheed is the one way out of this selfish mentality, because it forces you to see yourself as a servant of one who created many, so that you may serve him through serving the many that are around you. You want to be selfish, you have to be selfless first in order for you to be able to be selfish later. Tawheed is beautiful. Tawheed is extremely classy. Tawheed is what allows you to ascend above the whims and desires and basic instincts that you have as a mammal to something that's much more beautiful and much beyond that. Just understanding La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah means, if you believe it, that I can pick you up and drop you anywhere, anytime, throughout history, anytime, anywhere, what time, drop you here. You'll have the same value system. I drop you in 2023 in North America, or I pick you up and put you in 1000 AD somewhere in Europe, or I pick you up and put you somewhere in Africa before Islam, or doesn't matter. You will continue not to accept human harm. You won't kill, you won't steal, you won't lie, you won't betray. The same stuff. You won't commit zina, you won't drink khamr, because these are the values that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put. Doesn't matter what the movement around you. Doesn't matter what's happening elsewhere. Outside of the lines of La ilaha illallah, doesn't matter. Oh, the world could be doing many things. The world today is allowing things that most of us don't even understand. Like I can't even comprehend some of the words that are being used in explaining how people are behaving. Like I don't understand what they're saying. It's like the words aren't even English. I don't understand what they're saying anymore. But that doesn't matter what the world is doing. It doesn't matter how people are behaving or what they adhere to, what they don't, what they believe in or what they don't. Your lines are stable. They're the same. That is the value of Tawheed. Please take the value of Tawheed for what it is. Because if we're not like that, if you go with the flow, as people shift to the right or shift to the left in life, and you shift along, then what exactly is La ilaha illallah to you? You go back and see what lines did he draw, subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then you adhere to them, knowing that the only one that will hold you accountable to them is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wahda. So he told them, I asked you what he commands you. And you told me he commands you of monotheism. And he tells you to be honest and chaste. He's telling you to do good things. He's not telling you to do crazy stuff that make no sense. So what he told him is this. فَإِنْ كَانَ كَمَا أَخْبَرْتَنِي فَوَاللَّهِ لَيَمْلِكَنَّ مَوْضِعَ قَدَمِي هذا أو قدمي هاتين وقد كنت أعلم أنه خارج ولم أظن أنه خارج فيكم فلو أني أعلم أني أخلص إليه لتجشمت لقاءه ولو كنت عنده لغسلت قدمه. He told him, you see, if he is as you described him to me, then the day will come very soon where he rules this land that I stand on. Very soon he will be ruling the world, very soon. And I knew that this prophet was coming. I knew that there was a time where the final prophet was going to come, but I didn't think it was going to come amongst you people. Speaking to the Arab, I didn't think it was going to be you. I had no reason to believe you would be able to produce someone like that. But if I knew that I could make it to him, if I knew that I had a way to leave what I'm in and make it to him, then I would go. And if I lived with him, I would wash his feet. Sallallahu ala Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This is an authentic narration that is narrated to us by people who stood by Abu Sufyan that day. It's one of the most interesting stories that we have because of its authenticity. There's a lot of stories like that, but they lack a good chain of narration. So it's hard for me to narrate it to you because I don't know, or I can't believe that it's actually true. But this one here is quite authentic. And it's narrated to us by people who it's hard to believe that they would lie. And if it was a lie, Abu Sufyan would be the first person to stand out and call it out, and he didn't. He accepted Islam much later. But even before that and after that, he never actually denied this actually occurring. He never denied it because this is what happened. So Abu Sufyan walks out of that. Like he actually, I'm not sure if did I put it there or did I? No, I didn't. So he walks out and he says, لَقَدْ بَلَغَ مُلْكُ مُحَمَّدٍ أَنْ خَافَ مِنْهُ قَيْصَرٍ. He said, the strength of Muhammad is now at the point where Caesar's afraid of him. He was taken by this. SubhanAllah, he still didn't accept Islam. Abu Sufyan, it took him years. But he started to see this is insane. How does this guy know about him? And why is he fearing him? And why is he talking about him as if this is actually going to happen? These are the names of the 14 people the Prophet ﷺ sent. So these are the people that he sent to speak to the different kings. And it's important to know some of these names because we're going to talk about number 6 for a while. Because he was sent to Harith ibn Umayr al-Azdi, he was sent to the king of Busra. We're going to talk about him very closely. But I put it up there just so you can see some of these names. So Dihya al-Kalbi radiallahu anhu, who looked very much like the Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam, he was sent to Hiraql, and he was the guy who was there. So he's the one who tells us the story. Because he's like, I was standing there after I gave the king the letter, and I'm watching what's happening, and I can't believe what's going on. I can't believe the line of questioning. I can't believe the actual commentary that Caesar is giving. And I can't believe what he told Abu Sufyan that day. And it was just an interesting thing that occurred. He sent Hatib ibn Abi Balta'a to Al-Muqawqis Malik Iskandariya. So to the king of Egypt at the time, Muqawqis, he sent Hatib. Remember that name because Hatib is going to come up later. Hatib was very trusted. He's a person who fought in Badr. And he was so trusted that he was one of the people who carried the correspondence of the Prophet ﷺ to one of the kings. He only chose those who he trusted ﷺ to do this. And they had to be people who were bilingual or multilingual. He had to be people who could speak different languages because they had to go and speak. And all these people that you see here spoke at least an extra language, all of them. Because they were sent due to that fact that they were able to communicate with the king that they were going to speak to. So Dihya went and spoke to Caesar within the language that he spoke. Not that I know exactly what that language was, but he spoke in the language of Caesar. All right. So I didn't put an extra slide, so I'll just tell you the story here. So this battle that I'm going to tell you about is probably the most difficult one to tell the story of. It's a hard one to tell for multiple reasons. But when he sent these 14 people والسلام, as messengers just to carry a letter, you know what, let me tell you, let me see, did I put the story of Badhan first? Let me do that one first, just so we can start this properly. All right, so the king, let's do this one first. So amongst the people that he sent a letter to the king of Persia, Al-Kisra. So Kisra is looking at the letter, and he sees at the beginning of the letter, Min Muhammad Rasulillah ila Kisra Azimi Faris. From Muhammad, the Prophet of Allah, to the king of Persia. So he said, my slave is putting his name before mine, sallallahu ala Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is what he said. So he rips up, he doesn't even read the letter. He rips the letter, and then he sends one of his servants over to Yemen, where one of his the kings who had sworn allegiance to him, to bring him, or to kill the Prophet, or bring him to Tehran, to bring him to Kisra. So the Prophet ﷺ sent the messenger. The messenger wasn't killed. The messenger came back, and he told the Prophet ﷺ, this is what happened. The moment he read the first line, he ripped it up, and he's going to send for you. So the Prophet ﷺ قال مزقها. He ripped it, didn't read it. He said, yes, قال مزق الله ملكه. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rip his sovereignty, which is exactly what happened. So Kisra would send people over to Badhan. Badhan is the name of the king of Yemen. And telling him, go bring this gentleman who was sending me these letters, putting his name before mine. Bring him, and if he doesn't come, quietly kill him. I don't want him to. So Badhan sends two men, over to Medina. So the Prophet ﷺ in the masjid, and two gentlemen who are obviously not from around here are coming in. So they walk in, they look very different. They didn't have liha, so they were obviously not from the Arabs. So he asked him, who are you? فَقَالُوا نَحْنُ إِنَّ كِسْرَى يَطْلُبُكَ. Kisra is asking for you, so you need to come with us. You need to come with us to Caesar, because Kisra, they're much more powerful. The Persian Empire was the strongest empire at the time. So with the Arabs had no way to fight him. So if he's asking for somebody, then somebody's going to go. So the Prophet ﷺ smiled. فقال لا عد إلى باذان. Go back to the king of Yemen. وأخبره أن ربي قتل ربه. Go back and tell him that my Lord killed his. So they looked at each other like, all right, you're not going to come? No, all right, that's your death sentence, not ours. It's fine. Just tell him that. So they said, okay. So they go back to Badan. Now, what happened, this is Jibreel alayhi salam coming with information to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. What happened right after Kisra ripped up the correspondence and sent these people to Badan is that his son was preparing for a revolution or a coup. And the coup occurred and Kisra was killed. And then his son took over for a while, and then the brother of the Kisra who died fought him and killed him, and there was a whole mess that occurred within the sovereignty. And it took them a couple of years to actually get things back together again. So it was complete chaos. So the Prophet, Jibreel alayhi salam told the Prophet alayhi salam this piece of information. So the Prophet alayhi salam told these two gentlemen, go back to Badan and tell him that my Lord, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, killed your Lord, which is Kisra, because Badan was a slave to Kisra. So these two men go back to Badan, and they tell him this. فَبَذَانْ قَالَ مَا قَالْ. What did he say? He said, he told us to tell you. He said he's not coming. He's sitting amongst a bunch of people in this small little place. They actually describe it. He's sitting in a little place. There's no walls, barely even a ceiling. He's sitting. All these people are around him and listening to him. And I told him come, and he laughed at us and told us go and to tell you that his Lord killed yours. He said what? He said to tell you that his Lord killed yours. فَقَدْ كَيْفَ عَرَفْ. How does he know? Badan just received the correspondence from the capital that Kisra was killed, and there's a transition period. There's a lot of going on. There's chaos. There's no one who's actually in his spot yet because people are fighting. So you're on your own for a while. يقول بادان فقال ما أتتني إلا الساعة. I only received this just now. Just before you came in, someone brought it into me. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأنه عبده ورسوله. I swear he is the Prophet of Allah. Go back to him and tell him that I am with him. So they go back to the Prophet ﷺ and they tell him نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأنك عبده ورسوله. So he sends back with them people to teach them Islam. At the time it was Mu'adh. If you know the stories of Mu'adh, the very heartwarming stories where Mu'adh would go and the Prophet ﷺ would walk with him and speak to him, and we'll tell them inshallah later on. But he would send Mu'adh and a couple of other Sahaba to teach them how to do how to perform the judiciary responsibilities like qada. And he left Badan as the king of Yemen. And this was the first time that now you had within Arabia a king who was Muslim, and the people under him were also being encouraged to become Muslim. It took them a while to do so, but that's how this story began. So by the time the next Kisra came, and they figured out who was going to rule, they sent to Badan to say, okay, now you need to come and swear allegiance with the new Kisra. He sends back saying, no, I'm now, I follow Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is the beauty of this story. He sends Al-Harith ibn Umayr al-Azdi, radiallahu anhu warda, a 19-year-old young man. Very capable, very intelligent. He sends him over to Malik Busra, the king of Busra. And you know where Busra is. Where is Busra? Anyone know where Busra is? So it's in Sham, but which country is it in today? Huh? Yeah, it's where I come from. So it's in our country. So he used to rule Busra Sham. So he's ruling that area. Al-Harith comes to him, he gives him the letter just like everyone else. Now everyone knows that there's an unwritten law that everyone adheres to, which is you never kill the messenger, correct? That goes without saying. You don't kill the messenger, you just always send back a letter if you don't like what you're reading. That's why he sent 14 people, 13 of them came back alive. Unfortunately, this gentleman here, Harith ibn Umayr, he gives the letter. So the king who's standing there starts asking Al-Harith ibn Umayr questions about Islam. So Al-Harith stands there and he's answering these questions radiallahu anhu about Islam. But the king has already kind of given winked at one of his guards to kill him. So Al-Harith stands there, and as he stands there explaining about Islam, this guard begins to whack at him with a sword, basically chopping off his arms, one after the other. And he stays, radiallahu anhu, on his feet, standing, speaking to the king as this is occurring. He does not turn his back, and he does not show weakness, radiallahu anhu, until he's actually delivered the final blow that would kill him, radiallahu anhu wa ardah. In an amazing display of courage and bravery and strength, which is something that the Prophet ﷺ taught the Sahaba. Like he taught them that, just like he taught them Al-Fatiha and Al-Mu'awwidhatayn and Qul Allahu Ahad and all that other stuff. He taught them that if you're Muslim, you're strong. You're strong in your heart. Hopefully you're strong in everything else. Hopefully physically you have strength, and mentally you have strength, and intellectually you have strength, and socially and financially, and which is the khutbah I gave this yesterday. But he taught them to be strong, that you have to be, you're Muslim, you need to stand your ground. And you need to show strength. And at no point is it acceptable for you as a Muslim to show weakness or to show fear, even though you may have a lot of it in your heart at any given moment, which is normal. I'm pretty sure Harith was very scared when this started to happen. I'm sure he wanted to yell out in fear and scream and beg for mercy and not die that day. I'm pretty sure he didn't want to die that day. But he refused to do all of that. And he stood his ground and he continued to hold his head high and speak in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until his last breath. And this is important to understand. Because Muslims are supposed, that's how we are raised to be. That's what it means, La ilaha illallah. Again, from La ilaha illallah, you take that the only one who controls your life and your death is Allah. So you don't fear anyone else. Yes, there are reasons to be afraid, but you don't. You know that as long as you're doing the right thing, you're making the right decisions, you're walking the righteous path, then the only one you should be fearing from is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if He wants to take you early in your life, then He'll take you. And if He wants to leave you, then He will leave you. And no one else can make that decision but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Tawheed grants you that courage, grants you that bravery, and grants you that strength. So he stood there, radiallahu anhu, in a display of courage and bravery, and he was killed as a messenger who did nothing wrong. The Prophet ﷺ, as you can see, he pushed for peace with Quraysh. He forced their hand to sign a treaty of peace. He's sending correspondences to communicate a message. He's not saying, I'm coming to fight you, I'm not coming. No, he's sending out communications of a faith that he wants people to be aware of. The Prophet ﷺ would put up with everything except betrayal. Treason is different. It's one thing for there to be, animosity in a war and two armies, kind of standing, facing out or facing off. It's another thing for there to be full-blown betrayal and treason. This was not acceptable. The fact that he killed the messenger because he didn't like the message was not something the Prophet ﷺ was willing to put up with. Another thing is, how many of you, put your hand up if you know who Al-Harith ibn Umayr al-Azdi is before this story? From outside of this story, not from this story. Tell me something else you know about Al-Harith ibn Umayr. Or his dad, maybe, if he's one of the sons of the Sahaba. Or maybe nothing. We don't know anything about him. He comes from a very simple Islamic family. He's not from the nobles. He's not the son of Abu Bakr, or Umar, or Uthman, or Zayd, or Talha, or Sa'ad ibn Ubadah. He's not. He's not from these families who the father or the mother are very known individuals, so we have to get upset. That happens a lot in these communities. When someone who's famous, one of their children happens, everyone gets upset because it's, but when it's a simple background, the family's not known, they're not famous, they're not from the right race or right group or right background, it goes basically unnoticed. For the Prophet ﷺ, that wasn't how things were. If you were a Muslim, if you were a citizen of the state of Muslims, of that country of Medina, then you were very valuable. If you carried the Muslim passport, then your life was extremely valuable. He would move armies for you if you were mistreated or if you were transgressed against or oppressed. And because he did this, ﷺ, Muslims felt valued. They wanted to be a part of his state. They wanted to be Muslim. They wanted to contribute because they felt that someone had their back, that they were valuable citizens, that with their contribution, their existence is something that is respected and valued and appreciated. Not that they are there and they're singled out and they're seen as unwanted and they're mistreated or racially profiled or looked at differently or pointed at differently or spoken to differently or labeled differently. Countries that do that to their own citizens, what do they expect citizens to do? If you don't feel respected and valued and equal to people around you, then why would you contribute? Why would you? The world is now suffering because there's lack of equality and there's so much corruption and racism and hatred and bigotry that people don't feel like they belong to the countries that they carry the passport of. They don't feel protected and they don't feel valued and acknowledged and recognized. The Prophet ﷺ made it very clear. Harith ibn Umayr, no one knows him. He's not a big name. But he was a Muslim. And he was killed unjustly. Now who is he going to go up against? He's going to go up against the Byzantine Empire. If you've studied any amount of history in school, you know what that means. That's a huge empire that covers what is today maybe over 25 countries. The Prophet ﷺ is still stuck in Medina. He doesn't even have Mecca, doesn't even have like an area around Medina. It's just one city with barely maybe 3,000 to 4,000 people all together. But the moment that happened, the Prophet ﷺ took an immediate measure. He was told about the death of Al-Harith ibn Umayr after Isha. And he called people at Fajr time. Bilal made a call, everyone needs to attend. Everyone needs to attend right now. So everyone does. Everyone comes by. And the Prophet ﷺ standing on the minbar would say, قُتِلَ أَخُوكُمْ Al-Harith ibn Umayr. Your brother, Al-Harith ibn Umayr, was killed. فَمَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ فَلْيَتَجَهَّزْ لِغَزْوِ الرُّومِ. So whoever believes in Allah and the hereafter, prepare yourself, we're going to raid the Roman Empire. We're leaving. Now the Prophet ﷺ, just as a piece, he didn't actually go on this battle. This is the Battle of Mu'tah, as you all know. As you all know, this is the Battle of Mu'tah. The Prophet ﷺ didn't actually go with it. And this is a really important piece within this story. Because this is where the Prophet ﷺ began to hand things along. This is an extremely difficult, complex, but important tactic leaders have to do. They have to learn how to hand things down. Here, give people a little bit more responsibility. Give people more space so they can, hey, are we going to do something, inshallah? Is there a kahoot? Okay, then I'll end with this, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, very good. Jazakallah khair. So there's, sorry? In another 5 minutes? Okay, perfect. Okay, inshallah. So there's a kahoot for the younger people. And we have unlimited, inshallah, yani, names for the younger people to participate. Where was I? Yes. So the Prophet ﷺ was very good at this. You can see it, you can watch throughout his life, ﷺ, delegating and giving people space to actually spread their wings and do things without him being there. Taking a step back and letting others who be trained and taught to take and to make mistakes and then bring them back and then educate and teach and then give them another chance. We don't do that a lot. We don't. There's a struggle between the old and the young. It's an epic, long-lasting struggle of thousands of years where you work very hard. You come to an age where you're finally able to control and be in charge. So you hold on, and you hold on until the last breath. And in the process, the people who are supposed to be the successors, the people who come later, aren't given the chance to actually do anything. They have no training, they have no experience, and then when the people walk away, they come in and they're naive and they make mistakes because it takes them a long time to learn. But what should happen is that leaders must train leaders to come after them. So the Prophet ﷺ didn't go for Mu'tah because he had a plan, ﷺ. He had a plan. He wanted for this to be here. Your brother was killed. What are you going to do? This was unjust, it was unfair. There was no reason for this to happen. And we cannot allow people to, see, here's the thing. If you let it go, then it's saying, yeah, you can kill a Muslim and no one cares. Right? How many Muslims die every day today? Every day. Every day. Every single day since 1990. Every single day. Every single day since 1990. Every single day. I'm talking about over 30 years. Every day, Muslims in the tens and hundreds die all over the world. Because no one cares, unfortunately. Because Muslims themselves don't really care. If Muslims themselves don't care, then why would others? But on the other hand, other nationalities may die, and then that's worthy of 9 o'clock news. That's worthy of actually causing problems, right? But Muslims in the hundreds die daily, and it's not a problem. They can be thrown into concentration camps. They can be completely removed from their country. They can be thrown into jail with nothing. They could become, it doesn't matter. No one's going to say anything. The Prophet ﷺ put in effort to make sure that wasn't going to be the case. You killed a Muslim soul. You killed one of our citizens. What you think is going to slide? No, we're coming for you. Yes, you outnumber us. Yes, you have a bigger army. Yes, you have more allies. It doesn't matter. We're not scared of you. You betrayed us. We're coming for you. And that was a statement that since that moment, since after Mu'tah, that was it. Other kingdoms wouldn't touch Muslims again. It's like if we kill one of these guys, then it's a whole headache. We don't have to touch them. So they leave them alone. That was the goal here, to make the Muslim passport. There was no passport at the time. But if there were, to make it valuable. You carry it, okay, tfaddal, ahla wa sahla, no one's going to touch you. But that requires everyone to have the back of everyone else. So the Prophet ﷺ needed the Muslims to take some responsibility for themselves. So he sent them on this battle on their own. And he would assemble only 3,000 people. I'm going to continue the story inshallah next week, and I'll tell you this is a very interesting story on many levels. But before we do that, let's tell you the story of the three gentlemen who accepted Islam just before this period, just before Mu'tah. You know, you ever heard of Khalid ibn al-Walid? So right after Al-Hudaybiyah, after the Prophet ﷺ would send his brother, his name is Al-Walid ibn al-Walid. He would send him and tell him, tell your brother, يا خالد ما أخرك عن الإسلام ما كنا نظن أنك تجهل الإسلام وعقلك عقلك والله لو أتيتنا لأقدمناك. He would send him a message saying, Khalid, why are you so late in accepting Islam? I didn't think, this is what the Prophet ﷺ is sending him a verbal message. I didn't think that you would not know the value of Islam with the level of intelligence that you have. If you came to us, I would treat you well. So it touched, يقول خالد فلمس ذلك قلبي, and that touched me. I couldn't stop thinking about it. At night, even though he fought the Prophet ﷺ in every war, he fought him in Badr, in Uhud, in Khandaq, every time. In Hudaybiyah, he almost did it. He would turn from one side to the other at night, thinking to himself, why is he sending for me? Turning around, why does he care about me? يقول حتى نمت فرأيت في المنام رؤيا. Then I sleep and I see a vision. فرأيت نفسي في أرض ضيقة. I see myself stuck in this very cold and small area that's dark. And then I find a door, I kick it open, I enter, and I find myself in this huge meadow of green and light and beauty. I wake up, فأولتها الإسلام, and then I said, this must be Islam. That's what this must be. ولقد قاتلته في كل موضع فما هزمته فعلمت أنه غالب. And I fought him many times, and I can't seem to beat him. So I know that he is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala supports him himself. فقلت في نفسي لا أذهب وحدي. I don't want to go alone to Medina. I'm ashamed. I've fought him so many times. I want a companion. So he goes to Safwan ibn Umayyah. Safwan ibn Umayyah is like, what? You accept? I would never go to him. فقلت في نفسي هو رجل قتل أبوه. Safwan's father Umayyah bin Khalaf died during one of the wars, so he must be very upset. That's fine. ثم قلت أذهب إلى عثمان بن طلحة. Uthman ibn Talha is the guy who carries the king of the key of the Kaaba. So he goes to Uthman ibn Talha, and Uthman ibn Talha says, yes, I go with you. So they're companions on the trip. They're going to the Prophet ﷺ. Who do they meet on the way? They meet on the way Amr ibn al-As, who is on his way back from Abyssinia. Why? Because he's like, okay, you signed the treaty, you acknowledged him as a state, we're done for it. I need to leave this area immediately. So he goes to Abyssinia. If you remember in the old story, he's friends with the king of Habasha. So he goes to him, and the king of Abyssinia, ahlan wa sahlan, he sits him beside him. And then one of the Sahaba who are still in Habasha come to speak to the king. So Amr ibn al-As gets upset, and he said, Man hada? أعطني رأسه. Give me, I want to kill him. فإنه فمتبوعه أو نبيه عدو لي. His prophet is an enemy of mine. Let me kill him. Give me his head. فقال النجاشي أتريد أن تقتل صحابيا من صحابة رسول الله? You want to kill one of the companions of Rasulullah? So Amr ibn al-As looks at the king. Rasulullah. What do you mean Rasulullah? فقال النجاشي ألا تؤمن أنه رسول الله? You don't believe that he is Rasulullah? فقال عمر أو تؤمن أنت? You're asking me what? You believe that he is Rasulullah? فقال هو رسول الله يا عمر. He is the prophet of Allah يا عمر. فأعطني بيعتك. Give me the bay'ah now. Say لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله now. فقال عمر والله لقد هزمت. I have been beaten. I run away from Mecca away from him, and I find him waiting for me. Like I went away from Muhammad Rasulullah, I go to Habasha to get away from him. I go and find him waiting for me. The bay'ah is there. فَبَايَعْتُهُ. So I gave him my bay'ah. And I come back, and he said, in my mind, I'm like, I have to go meet him, but how do I meet him? After everything I've done, the number of times I have betrayed him, how do I meet him? So I see Khalid and Uthman. So they want to do the kahoot, but there was a little bit of a maneuvering. Because they don't want to tell each other that they're going, that Khalid is scared to tell Amr, and Amr is scared to tell Khalid. Because they don't know that they've accepted Islam. Khalid is like, I don't want to tell Amr ibn al-As, and then he kills us. And Amr is like, I don't want to tell Khalid, and then they kill me. So they kind of go back and forth. Where are you going? North. I'm going north too. North where? And they go back and forth for a little bit, and they finally figure out, and I'm going to Yathrib. Oh, you mean, just who are you meeting there? And they finally came to it, ذاهب إلى رسول الله أبايعه. I'm going to the Prophet to give my bay'ah. So they all gang up together. They go to Medina, all three of them enter the Prophet ﷺ's masjid. He's sitting like this, he's giving a halaqah. He sees, يقول فبش وجه رسول الله عليه الصلاة. His face lit up, a big smile. And he gets up عليه الصلاة والسلام. He goes to Khalid and Uthman and Umar, and he hugs them and he sits them down. And he's happy as can be. And he gives them, and they give their bay'ah. And the moment Khalid ibn Walid says, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, that day, the Prophet ﷺ would say, Allahumma ghafir li Khalid ma mada. Oh Allah, forgive Khalid for all that has happened before. And then Uthman ibn Talha does the same thing. He makes dua for him. And then Amr ibn al-As comes to put his hand in the Prophet ﷺ's hand for bay'ah. The Prophet ﷺ puts his hand out, Amr pulls his hand back. For the Sahaba, like, collectively, all together. What are you doing? Why are you pulling your hand back? The Prophet ﷺ is putting his hand out. فَقَالَ عِنْدِي شَرْط. I have a condition. So the Prophet ﷺ said, what condition do you have, Ya Amr? فَقَالَ أَنْ يُغْفَرْ لِي مَا مَضَى. Everything I've done has to be forgiven. Everything. There are things you don't even know about, Ya Rasulullah. I need everything, no exception to the rule. Everything has to be forgiven. If not, I'm not going to do this because it's not worth it. I've done so many wrong things before. I need everything to be forgiven. فقال صلى الله عليه وصحبه وسلم يا عمر ألا تعلم أن الإسلام يجب ما قبله. Don't you know that accepting Islam from a state of lack of Islam or of disbelief will erase everything before us and open and turn a new slate? فمد عمر يده. Amr put his hands out and he gave the bay'ah to the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. I told you this story because these three are going to have a role in the story for next week. So I'll give you, inshallah, we can move on to the Kahoot. Inshallah, subhanahu wa ta'ala, so make sure you take out your phones, and then Brother Aboud will kind of walk you through it, inshallah.
Thank you. Jazakallah khair. Oh no, I'm good.
How do you say it?
ها
How do you say invisible?
just زي لعبة بس عن الموضوع الموبايل أيوة زي مسابقة. Yeah. Alright, assalamu alaikum. So inshallah there's a Kahoot today. It will be about the Treaty of Hudaybiyah that Shaykh Hanan talked about last week. And so the game code, for those who can't see, it is 4986167. I'll say it again, 4986167. Yeah, or just I'll read it, you repeat it or something like that. Alright, can I just ask everyone to sit down, please? Can I ask everyone to sit down, please, so that people in the back can see? Brothers, can you sit down, please? Thank you. Can I ask you to sit down, please? Can you just sit down? Can you sit down, please? Just so everyone in the back can see as well. Alright, we'll get started in like 30 more seconds. I'll say the code one more time. It's 4986167. Inshallah, we'll get started.
One more minute.
Right? One more minute.
Okay, we're starting.
Alright, so the first question is starting in 3, 2, 1. So what commandment did the Prophet ﷺ ask that the Sahaba ignored? So this is all the questions are related to the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, by the way, that we talked about last week, inshallah.
The first option is shave their heads. Second, slaughter their offerings. Third, refrain from performing Umrah. And lastly, all of the above.
Alright, let's see. It was all the above. So the Sahaba did not listen to any of the 3 commandments that the Prophet had ordered them.
Only 60 people got that right?
Alright, beautiful is in the lead. Whoever that is.
Okay, second question we have, according to the treaty, how long do the Muslims have to wait to perform Umrah?
So it's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years. How long do the Muslims have to wait to perform Umrah?
The question's also at the top of the screen if you didn't see it the first time.
You guys got 5 seconds. 2, 1, and let's see the answer. It was 1 year. Majority got that. Nice. And let's see the leaderboard. Right, can you hit next? It's the same leaderboard except Yusuf is coming up.
Beautiful, still in the lead.
All right, question number 3. It's true or false. During the year of the treaty, did the Muslims perform Umrah? It's a true or false question. You guys got 10 seconds. Three, two, one. Beautiful. Yeah, it was false. They did it the next year after.
Badur is now in second. And we have Beautiful Soul in first place.
And Badr is in third or second.
Okay, which one of the Prophet's wives saved the day?
So which wife told the Prophet to do the action so that the companions can follow him after him? 4, 3, 2, 1, and let's see the answer. Yep. So 27 got that right.
Oh.
All right,
Beautiful,
there's
still
one
in the
more
lead.
question, and the leaderboard is looking very tight. So this one could make or break it for some people.
According to the treaty, how long were the Muslims allowed to stay in Mecca for? Last question.
So how long were the Muslims allowed to stay in Mecca when they came back? So either 2 years, 2 days, 3 years, or 3 days. Think about this one. And you got 5 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. 3 days, pretty easy. And let's see the leaderboard.
Third place, we have Nasri FC. Second place, Aqib Iqbal. And first place, we have Beautiful.
Beautiful. All right, who's beautiful? All right,
Abud.
congratulations, beautiful. See the phone?
MashaAllah.
Thank you everyone for coming out. Inshallah, we'll run this on a weekly basis. Jazakumullah